welcome to Crank It Up. I'm Jim Price, and this is a precursor to a World Champs preview. For baseball, the All-Star game is this week, which is something I would say if I actually checked a calendar, because they pushed it back this year. Still, I'm in an All-Star mood because of it, so here we are. As many of you know, there have been many spoilers for the World Champs that can be found at the end of recent videos, but puzzles aren't for everybody, so I thought I would talk about who didn't make the cut, but could have. At the very least, it helps you narrow down your theories as to who is included, but it's also a chance to talk about what goes into making an All-Star style faction in terms of what cards play well in a general capacity. These factions are tricky because art is done in advance, which severely limits your flexibility in terms of making changes. Ever wonder why Pirate King is shown in Prepare for Battle? All the others are reflected in the class, but not pirates. Having played World Champs a number of times, they feel really strong, and I think part of it is that when you have unique cards, there's a tendency to go for Strength Plus options to compensate for the lack of a guarantee, and these cards are usually overslot. With the Basketball All-Stars, we're talking about combining Non-Infinite Loop, Ghostly Arrival, It's Astounding, Square Deal, really powerful cards that ditch the faction context that might hold them back. So in light of this, I wanted to look at 10 cards who should get All-Star consideration in a future deck because their abilities play well in many contexts. For this video, I am only doing minions, one per faction, and I am limiting myself to the design constraint of the World Champs, which is exclusively cards that have come out since the first All-Stars. However, I am not calling this a faction, and there is no thought that these cards are chosen together. They are all here independently, and none of these cards should be considered too strong for their slot. Starting with the recruits, Liferu is a good fit in any deck. In this All-Star context, Liferu can give you one chance at recurring a powerful card and using it again. I always enjoy shuffling from my minion slot because it lets me advance my cause while still expanding my options later. I can use draw-based actions to get it back. Liferu is special because he can have an impact without being spammed, whereas someone like Krakatoad is only valuable as an extra play because otherwise you are bursting with a Howler type. My next recruit is Huskarl. There are many recruits who can reach for power, but Huskarl has the flexibility of doing it easily on your terms. I love power activation, and I think Huskarl actually gets better outside the Viking context because it gives you a nice boost without incentivizing you to deplete your hand significantly and being stuck with a stale draw. I think this is an underrated recruit, definitely one who puts the Raider to shame. My next recruit is Tsar Eagle. Tsar Eagle is the upper edge of acceptable for being a recruit, which definitely has the Strength Plus factor since most Russian cards are unique. Tsar Eagle can draw a card, which is always great, but I think the second ability is underrated and would still work outside the transformation context. Instead of guaranteeing a transformation, slowing down someone's draw can be just as impactful. It delays a better draw, so you give them a card that doesn't work for the situation, and this ability is really effective. My final recruit may not technically be a recruit, but given that both elites for the World Champs aren't traditional elites, it should not matter. Regurgitating Penguin has an ability that always plays well. If you recall, when the Geek license was lost and the Penguins had to replace them in the All-Stars, I wanted Regurgitating Penguin to take the spot. It would have been a perfect fit in that deck, and I think it can go in any deck. It's continual draw with a little bit of deck foresight on an on-play ability. This would have been an easy minion to include. Moving on to the soldiers, my first pick is Pink Trooper. Green Trooper is too strong for an ability to repeat it a third time. Black Trooper needs his faction context. But Pink Trooper is special in ways that may not be apparent. If you are already winning, many of the Mega Trooper abilities are dead, not Pink Trooper. Whether she recurs herself or someone else, she always has a use, and a perpetual recurring 3 does have a lot of value, with the option of bringing someone else back. I think Pink Trooper is underrated in this regard. I did choose her from my Triad All-Star faction, and she still deserves consideration here. My next choice is Power Maid. There are some people who say that Magical Girls are not a Swarm faction, and if that's true, then Power Maid doesn't need to be in a Swarm-style All-Star context either. When you are winning a base, you generally have 3 minions there, so it's not hard to pull a minion on or push one off. Power Maid is good for both spread and waste strategies. She is a good lead-off minion, and if the Magical Girls can get by with only 2 extra minion plays, I'm sure there's an All-Star context where she fits into it. The final soldier is Blaster, who I think would get more meaningful outside the Goblin context because you can't rig the coin flip. Plus, it would be meaningful now because you'd have the Goblin coin and have a card to actually use it with. Even in the single context, the Blaster has a 50-50 shot of being a first mate. It would be a way of showing off a unique mechanic, one who with luck can stay in play forever, and it's a way of honoring an iconic card like the first mate without being broken. For the elites, this was harder because many elites are either too context dependent or too strong to include. My first choice is the extremely underrated Northern Mover of the extremely underrated Mounties. Northern Mover gives you a choice of abilities that plays well in any deck, especially the ability for uncapped allied movement potential. This is a way of giving movement to a faction that isn't movement focused, as you can always play them for power increases if you needed to, but I love having this minion out as an engine minion. Given that there are no local restrictions or power restrictions, Northern Mover may be beyond the line of acceptable, but I do think that is to make up for the underwhelming War Canucks. My final choice is a replacement for Aramis, who isn't that good unless they resolve the clarificata caused by Daring Gate. Without acting like a true ongoing, Aramis acts like a restricted action play that he must be involved in both aspects of the equation, and I think Athos is much more unique. I like Athos because instead of giving you more plays, he does more with the plays you have, which makes you less reliant on card draw and crazy chains. You can get value out of just one action play, which frees up the world champs to have much more diversity of actions. Given that it is known that Aramis and Diva are both in there, you pretty much have to focus on standard actions at Grand Power. In my opinion, Athos would limit that restriction while still replicating the overall effect. But every faction needs a leader, and since I already chose Liferu, Critter Champion is unavailable, but there is a next best candidate, Anansi. I'd actually love to see Anansi outside his normal context, because it would mean there is no gimmick, no collecting stories. Some might say this makes Anansi weak, but given that there is the Anansi clause anyway, I would view this as being extremely intentional. You need to make sure that you weigh the balance of direct access and extra plays with the fact that you are giving your cards away, and I think that would be so much fun in an all-star style deck with new abilities. While this does put the focus back on standard actions, if you recall I said I'm picking them all independently. I think Anansi would add much more intrigue than the current World Champions leader, but to be fair, I do like them better in this context than the original one. Sadly, Anansi is the leader we need, but not the leader we have, nor is it Critter Champion, unfortunately. Now that you know some candidates who aren't in the faction, perhaps you can guess who might be in. Which minions are you hoping to be in the World Champs? Let me know in the comments. One quick announcement. I'm going to be taking off parts of the summer to get more time in for other things I need to do. It's still too early to fully promote the 10th anniversary anyway, and with all the content released this year, it's very time-consuming playing games to try it out. Barring something unexpected, there won't be a video next week or every week, but there will be some on random weeks, so be sure to subscribe and click the bell for notifications so that you don't miss anything. But for now, let's shut it down.